Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Carlson,
Here.
Rushilis,
Here.
Pretorius,
Here.
Parker, Russo,
Here.
I was going to state that Bryce Parker was going to remote in, but it does not seem like that will be the case tonight. Start with the opening statement. The Iowa City Board of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial body created by the city of Iowa City according to state statutes. The board's purpose is to decide on applications for variances from the zoning ordinances, appeals of decisions of city officials, and applications for special exception requested under the zoning ordinance. The Board of Adjustment is an independent volunteer board made up of Iowa City residents and is not a part of the city administration. We are assisted in our work by the city attorney's office and by planning staff. Prior to this meeting, board members received the materials submitted by the applicant, the staff reports, reviewing the application and any correspondence submitted by members of the public. Board members have not discussed the application or its merits with each other, staff, the applicant, or any other member of the public in advance of this meeting. All consideration and discussion by the board takes place in open meeting here tonight, where we also have an opportunity to hear from the public. The board bases its decision on facts and evidence allowed by city code presented in open meeting. Concise and truthful testimony helps us a great deal in our decision-making. We ask that if you wish to speak, that you come to the podium, print your name and an address on the sign-in sheet and speak clearly into the microphone so your testimony can be heard by all present and by our minute taker as all testimony becomes part of the public record. We ask that proceedings be orderly, and then when you are testifying, your address and remarks to the board. If this hearing becomes lengthy, we may ask the testimony be focused on new facts or information not already presented. The order of proceedings for each application will be an oral report by staff summarizing the issues of the case and staff's recommendations, an opportunity for the applicant to speak, an opportunity for any other interested parties to speak for or against the application, an opportunity for final statements and arguments by the applicant and staff. Then the board will discuss the issues and evidence, state its findings, and vote on a motion. Motions are always made in the affirmative. The first item on the agenda tonight, number 3, request for reconsideration. This is a request to reconsider the decision for EXC 21-0009 dated August 11th, 2021. An application submitted by Axiom Consultants requesting a special exception to allow a 50% parking reduction for other unique circumstances and to allow parking within the exterior walls of the building in a CB-10 zone to construct a new mixed-use building at 21 South Linden Street. Sue, can you confirm at this time that we can hear from the applicant?
Yes. This is the first item on the agenda, just for everyone's sake, including the board. As I said in my memo, this is not an application for a special exception, but a request to reconsider a decision you made on a special exception at the last meeting. So this is not about the substance itself of the application, but whether or not the board wishes to reconsider its decision. And in order to do that, someone who voted in the majority will need to make the motion. So that would need to be the board member Carlson, Rushilis, or Russo would have to make the motion. Anybody can second, but one of those three, except the chair, who under our rules cannot either move or second. But anybody after that could make a second. So you're not required to make the motion. Yeah, and if there's no motion is made, or if it dies for a lack of a second, we'll just go on to the second item. All right. So, but you'll first hear on behalf of the person requesting, and I believe it'll be Mike Pugh, their attorney, will be here making that request to reconsider. Board, have any sort of procedural questions before we move on?
So will there be discussion over this then?
No, somebody will have to make a motion. If nobody makes a motion, there's no board discussion.
I see.
Okay. All righty, here we go. Or anybody else. I just assumed it would be you.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Pugh. I'm here on behalf of the applicant as their representative. We submitted our request for reconsideration in writing and from a letter from me, and that was also supplemented by correspondence from Andy Savoy, who is the development specialist for CA Ventures. I guess really at its core, the procedural rules for the board really permit the applicant to put forth and speak at the board in support of their application. And then opponents are permitted an opportunity to voice any concerns or opposition in connection with that application. But then importantly, for the applicant should be given a chance then to rebut any information or comments that were supplied by people that opposed that particular application. And so our request really centers around Bob Miklow's letter that was received by the board literally an hour or so before the meeting, which the applicant never received a copy of, not until the next day. And so in their presentation before the board, the applicant didn't get a chance to address Mr. Miklow's comments, the points that he made, and didn't get a chance to rebut those items. The board had received the copy and proceeded to discuss the contents of Mr. Miklow's letter, but the applicant never saw it, never saw it until the next day. And so, you know, part of the issue with Mr. Miklow's letter, obviously, is that he's a former senior planner for the city of Iowa City. And when folks like Mr. Lehman produced the staff report, which was very detailed in this particular case, and supported approving the application, that report is done with objectivity and an analysis of the code at the time, and going through, as you've seen, these staff reports are very detailed, going through all of the specific factors. And in this particular case, Mr. Lehman and the staff recommended approval. Well, the first thing Mr. Miklow says in his letter is he lets you know that he's a former senior planner. So to me, the letter was written in sort of this cloak of objectivity of the analysis of the code, but make no mistake, that letter was written in a persuasive fashion and left out certain details, left out certain facts, twisted certain things that from an applicant standpoint, the applicant should have had a chance to rebut. So in my mind, you know, this was a situation where the application was presented. We had a favorable recommendation from the staff. There was no other opponent that spoke at the meeting. The only bit of resistance or negative comments came from Mr. Miklow's letter that the applicant never even saw. So as a board, I think you have to ask yourself, but for Mr. Miklow's letter, would the vote have turned out differently? We think the answer to that is clearly yes, that it would have turned out differently. And we'd like an opportunity to rebut that information that Mr. Miklow provided in the way that he provided it and sort of the partial truths that he provided to the board. And as a whole, Mr. Savoy presented some of that information to you in his letter, but the analysis between our project and their peer group, which is really only a few projects in town, the data concerning the parking requirements for student housing like the CA Ventures project is critical. And I think maybe most importantly is all of the variety of ways in which our project is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. Mr. Miklow conflates the comprehensive plan with the code. And I think Ms. Dulick did an excellent job at the meeting trying to steer your direction away from the fact of really what the comp plan is, but Mr. Miklow's letter conflates the two. And so there's a whole host of information that I think the applicant can provide in terms of showing how their project is in fact in compliance with the comprehensive plan. And they respectfully request an opportunity to do so. Thanks. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mike.
Kirk, I have a question for you.
Okay.
What happened? How were they left out of that information?
Sure. So the letter came in relatively late. Copies were printed off for the Board of Adjustment. Not enough copies were printed off for the applicant. And so the applicant requested, or I asked the applicant if they were fine waiting until the next day. They said that they were. But now they would like, I mean, they did not get a chance to see the letter in advance.
Yeah.
I have a question for Mr. Pugh. In our informational packets for this current meeting, which includes your request for reconsideration, your points of rebuttal are included, as well as another set of rebuttal from Mr. Miklo. Would you not consider, so we do have that information in front of us, would you not, and the fact that you're having your time here to request the reconsideration, would you not categorize that as rebuttal?
Yeah, and Ms. Dulick can clarify. So I think the way the procedural rules work is, I think we're not discussing substantive issues necessarily this evening. That the issue before you is whether or not the request for reconsideration should be granted. In order to do so, according to the procedural rules, you have to put forth some minimal explanation for the request, what information that you would present at a subsequent board meeting. I think that's required in order to grant the request. So I don't believe tonight is the time for presenting the full weight of the evidence that we would present. I had Mr. Savoy present some information just so that our request wasn't denied because we didn't articulate some basis or some little bit of evidence that we would present at a subsequent meeting.
I don't disagree with Mr. Pugh. And should there be a vote and a second and to reconsider, at the next meeting, we will publish the public hearing. We'll open the public hearing. We'll hear from anybody on any subject having to do with that application. It'll be a brand new,
It's a brand new meeting.
right, brand, yes. For people in favor as well as against, yes.
Any other questions for Mr. Pugh at this time?
So we can't discuss it until we make a motion to,
Right, somebody's gonna have to move and someone's gonna have to second.
well, I think in all fairness that I think we need to reconsider. And I'd make a motion to that effect.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Would have to be up to Chris Schillis or Carlson because the chair cannot second a motion. So
I will not second it.
Nor will I.
do we have Board Member Parker on the phone?
Board Member Parker's not on the phone.
Leave the matter then dies for lack of a second.
Can I ask a procedural question?
Mike, hold on.
In light of the fact that one member is abroad serving the military, do they get another chance to request?
No,
So is he just not reachable?
Not by any means that I have access to currently.
Can the vote be left open until we reach him?
Motion's on the floor.
Right, right,
Can we
mean-
defer a reconsideration?
Motion's on the floor.
right. It could be, could be deferred.
If the motion's on the floor, we are open now for discussion at this point.
No, you need a second, but someone can move. You can make the motion to defer. You're still going to need a second to
I
defer.
didn't hear that.
You're still going to need a second to defer, so.
Can I step down as chair?
No.
Should have done that earlier.
I don't know whether either Chris Schillis or Carlson are open to a deferral of the motion pending a full board.
No, I am not.
I need to withdraw.
Nor am I.
It just dies.
Yes, so that dies as well as a second, so, okay.
All right.
We'll proceed to item, I think, 3A and turn it over to the chair and Kirk.
Excellent. Okay. Moving on to special exception item EXC 21-0013. This is an application submitted by I'm On Communications requesting a special exception to allow a basic utility use in a community commercial CC2 zone to build a telecommunications hub at 755 Mormon Trek Boulevard. The public hearing is now open and we will hear from staff.
Thank you. Tonight's application is for IMON as a basic utility use in a CC2 zone at 755 Mormon Trek Boulevard. That is the Walden Square development area. The aerial is on the screen right now. So Walden Square contains a mix of uses, some commercial buildings, some residential buildings above. It does have apartments to the north and west, and then it has across the street, across Mormon Trek, it's got some single-family homes, but that's a ways away from where the proposed use is. The area is currently zoned community commercial, CC2. Most of the areas around it are also CC2 again, with low-density residential multifamily to the north and west, and then low-density single-family across Mormon Trek Boulevard. But again, that's a ways away. So IMON is a local telecommunications provider. They provide cable, internet, some other services within Iowa City, and they're seeking to expand their service capabilities. So they currently have applied to establish a telecommunications hub at 755 Mormon Trek Boulevard. It would be attached to the north side of the garages on the west side of the property. So I'll show you where that is in a second. Again, as a basic utility use, it's allowed by special exception when not enclosed within a building that houses another principal use. The hub will require screening around it because they're residential properties, so to the S3 standard. But the building itself is relatively small. The hub is unmanned. It's 15 feet by 16 feet. And again, it would be screened by that screening or landscaping, and then there would be a retention wall or detention wall to the north as well. So as you can see, it's on the far west property line, just on the north side of that. As far as what that looks like, like I said, it's relatively small building attached to the north side of the garages. The site plan also shows screening to the north and west, and then that retaining wall to the north. There is also a generator that's proposed with a fence around the generator that would be within that area. This is the garages looking north. So you can see some multifamily uses to the north. You can see the garages. You can see a garbage enclosure close to it. This is a closer look at where it would be. So the pavement is already expanded, but you can see that grade change that necessitates the retaining wall. This is a close-up of the area where it would be included, looking west. So again, pavement is already there. And this is looking east from the back side of those garages. So again, you can see that slope pretty clearly there. They did provide a concept with their application. So you can see it's roughly the same size of the garage. It's a little taller, 10 feet. But it basically extends those garages an additional 16 feet to 15 feet in depth. And then it would have HVAC units on the back. And again, it's an unmanned site. So tonight, the role of the Board of Adjustment is to approve with conditions, or deny the application based on the facts presented. To approve the special exception, the board must find that meets all applicable approval criteria. That includes both specific standards for the waiver requested and then the general standards for all special exceptions. So in this case, the specific standard is located at section 14(4)B 4D 1B2, which says in all commercial zones, basic utilities not enclosed within a building with another primary use are permitted only by special exception. Proposed uses must be screened from public view and from view of any adjacent residential zones to at least the S3 standard. In addition, the applicant must provide evidence that the proposed use will be compatible with surrounding structures and uses with regards to safety, size, height, scale, location, and design, particularly for facilities located close to or within view of residential zones. So in my presentation, I'm kind of breaking that down into two separate chunks of text there, since it's a lot. So first, proposed uses must be screened from public view and from the view of any adjacent residential zones to at least the S3 standard. So first, the uses at the rear of the lot that is not within public view. So public view is highly visible from a public street, sidewalk, access easement, or other public way, or from a public park or other public open space. Proposed screening on the site plan is provided to the S3 standard to the north and the west, which is where there are the adjacent residential uses. And again, to the south would be the existing garages. And then there's also that block retaining wall to the north as well, due to the elevations. As far as whether it meets S3 screening standards, that is typically reviewed during site plan review. So they would submit a landscaping plan and staff would review the standards at that time, but based on their concept, staff would anticipate that would meet S3 standards. Second, that it's compatible with surrounding structures and uses. In this case, the basic utility use would be an enclosed structure. It would have a locked door, so that would prevent unauthorized access, which would help mitigate public health and safety issues. Again, the proposed structure is 1 story, so it's in scale with the surrounding structures that are approximately 1 or 2 stories, though it is slightly taller than the existing garages. But staff would recommend a condition, because it is attached to those garages, that the proposed structure match the design of the existing building, specifically regarding colors, textures, materials, roof pitch, and related features, just to help provide visual continuity between the new building and the existing buildings. There are also 7 general special exception standards at 14(4)B3 that pertain to all special exceptions. The first is that the specific proposed exception will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, comfort, or general welfare. Again, in this case, the use is in an enclosed structure with a locked door, which prevents access and mitigates public health and safety issues. There is a small generator that would support the use directly west of the site. It's about 12 feet from the west lot line. Based on what's the information provided by the applicant, staff expects it to produce approximately 64 decibels of sound, which is somewhat similar to air conditioning units at about 100 feet. At 60 decibels, TV, audio, and vacuum cleaners at about 70 decibels, somewhere in between. And that's also approximately the range of a normal conversation. The site plan does include a 6-foot tall privacy fence enclosing the generator, but staff recommends a condition that that fence be solid, which would help mitigate any potential spillover sound into adjacent properties. In addition, the use would also provide internet and cable options to Iowa City residents, improving general welfare. The second is that the specific proposed exception will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity and will not substantially diminish or impair property values in the neighborhood. So the use will allow for another internet service provider in Iowa City and increased bandwidth capabilities again. And the proposed structure is small at only approximately 240 square feet. It's in the far northwest corner of the property, and it is screened from adjacent residential uses. Staff did recommend that condition regarding design as well. So that will help mitigate impacts on surrounding properties. And again, there is that generator that will produce some sound, but with staff's condition, staff doesn't believe that that is an issue. So staff believes that with the conditions as proposed, this criteria is met. The third is that the exception will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding property for uses in the district. The property and surrounding lots are fully developed and the structure is set back from adjacent property lines. And staff believes that landscaping improvements will mitigate visual impacts. So staff believes that this criteria is met. The fourth is that there are adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, and or necessary facilities. And again, the area is fully developed with access to utilities and other necessary facilities. But staff will also review compliance with all of applicable standards during the site plan and building permit review required as part of the process. The fifth is that adequate measures have been or will be taken to provide ingress or egress designed to minimize traffic congestion on public streets. The property generally does have adequate circulation and parking. So there is an access alley that you can get to from West Winds Drive. Because the site is unmanned, it's not expected to substantially increase traffic and should only need occasional maintenance. There is a dumpster directly east of the property, but there appears to be adequate space for parking between the enclosure and the structure and adequate space for garbage trucks to continue to access the structure. There's also a pedestrian route proposed north of the building to provide access to that generator per the site plan. So staff believes that that is met. 6, except for the specific regulations and standards applicable to the exception, it has to meet all other standards of the zoning code. So in this case, there are no minimum parking requirements for basic utility uses. The property is east of properties that are zoned low-density multifamily residential. So for commercial zones, the rear setback has to equal the setback of abutting residential zones. In this case, that setback is 20 feet for the RM12 zone. The site plan shows that the property is currently set back 17 feet, so it is slightly short of that. So the applicant can either shift the building 3 feet to the east, or they could request a minor modification to reduce the setback by 3 feet. Based on a preliminary review, it appears that it would meet those requirements for a minor modification, but it would need to be approved prior to site plan review. As far as other setbacks, the generator does meet accessory use setbacks, which are different than those main setbacks, so it can be close to the property line. And other standards appear to be met, but staff, again, would ensure compliance during site planning building permit review for all those other ones. And then finally, it has to be consistent with the comprehensive plan of the city. So as far as the comprehensive plan shows the future land use designation for this area as general commercial, and the Southwest District Plan shows it as neighborhood commercial. Generally, the Southwest District Plan encourages the development of businesses that provide goods, services, and amenities to the neighborhood. Based on these findings, staff believes that that criteria is met. So because of those, staff recommends approval of EXC 21-0013 to establish a basic utility use at 755 Moreland Track Boulevard, subject to 2 conditions that I had touched on previously. First, that the exterior of the structure match the exterior of the existing buildings to which it will be attached, including colors, textures, materials, roof pitch, and related features. So staff would recommend that that be approved during site plan review. And then second, that the generator used to power the telecommunications hub shall be enclosed by a 6-foot tall solid privacy fence to mitigate noise spillover onto adjacent property. And that concludes staff's presentation and recommendation. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Kirk. Any questions for
I
staff?
do- I have one. Do we have to say anything about the fact that it's 17 feet from the thing? So they either have to move it or they have to ask for a minor adjustment. Does that have to be included in when we talk about our findings tonight?
So it does not, because as currently proposed, it would have to be adjusted in some way, whether through a minor modification or through an increased setback during site plan, or site plan couldn't be approved. That being said, you could also say, if you would prefer that they get a minor, if you prefer one or the other, that they shift the building or get a minor mod, that would be within the purview of the board.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
For, how close is the nearest residence?
It's set back a ways. I don't have an exact answer for that, but there is green space and then there's parking and then there's the residence. And I can pull up the aerial if you would like to see that again.
If, my question is, if there is a lot of spillover from the generator, is there a way, is there another avenue that this can be addressed?
So there are noise regulations in the city that could come into play. If it was a nuisance and it would affect that generator in some way where the generator turns out that it does violate the noise and the peace of the neighbors, I believe that they would have recourse where the generator would have to be moved or additional screening provided. Sue can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's my understanding of it.
Okay. Would the applicant now like to speak?
My name is Joe Myers. I'm a engineer, so to speak, for IMO Communications. The generator, as far as it running, the only time it will run is for a 5-minute exercise cycle during the business day. So it would come on like once for probably 15 minutes during the day, and the only other time it'll come on is if I lose commercial power. So in that respect, it'll, it's just a fail safe.
It's just it's a backup. It's a backup generator.
It is. It's a backup generator.
What's inside the building?
It's going to be, it's just, there's a power supply in there. It's neg 48, which is a low voltage power. It's got, we're going to have our equipment that will actually, we provide fiber to the home. So it's just going to be equipment that we can actually reach out to the surrounding neighborhood. It's not high voltage by any means. The only voltage that's going to be going up there is just for the 200 amp single phase that I'm going to have ran up to the structure itself. But other than that, yeah, I did one on F Street and First Avenue over by Hy-Vee a couple of years back. This is just to feed that part of town. And there's no flat part of Mormon Trek Boulevard, by the way, if you guys haven't noticed. So for the most part, when we found the spot, the exterior is going to match perfectly to the structure. So in other words, all we're going to do is extend it out 16 feet. I wouldn't have problems coming in the other 2 feet, but I kind of really need a little extra room for my rack separation because there's going to be equipment racks in there. But as far as any kind of harm to the public or anything like that, it doesn't exist there. I mean, you would have to really try and hurt yourself.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak in favor of the application? And is there any member of the public who wishes to speak against the application? All right. Since there was no comments from the public, I guess there's nothing to respond to at this time. Any additional questions for staff? All right. There's no more questions, clarity required. We can make sorry. No other discussion with the public, so I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And then we can make a motion to put it on the table for discussion.
I'll make that motion.
Go ahead.
We're making a motion to open it up for discussion among ourselves, is that it?
Oh, you have to motion for approval.
Just for the record, you can move for EXC
Okay.
21-0013. That's
Okay, regarding EXC 21-0013, I concur with the findings set forth in the staff report of meeting date September 8th, and conclude that the general and specific criteria are satisfied. I recommend that the board adopt the findings in the staff report for the approval of this proposal.
Right.
Did we have to make the motion for the approval first?
Yeah, we'll just combine them.
Okay,
We'll Combine the
right.
motion to approve with the findings, and then if someone wants to second.
I'll second for approval.
Right. And you said the finding of facts are already wrapped up in that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any other comments, discussion of the board before we vote? Nope. Roll call, please.
Carlson,
Yes,
Chrisellis,
Yes,
Parker, Pretorius,
Yes.
Russo,
Yes.
Okay, the motion is declared approved. Any person desiring to appeal this decision to a court of record may do so within 30 days after the decision is filed with the city clerk's office. Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is actually 3 items we will combine into one. This is special exception EXC 21-003, EXC 21-0004, and EXC 21-0014. Applications by LT Leon Associates for a special exception to allow drive-through facilities in a common commercial CC-2 zone for online grocery pickup at the Hy-Vee, Iowa City Hy-Vee number 3, number 1, and number 2 locations, respectively 1125 North Dodge Street, 1720 Waterfront Drive, and 812 South First Avenue. All right. The public hearing is open, and we will now hear from staff.
Okay. And I think the easiest way is probably to go through one by one still, but for the sake of the public hearings, they'd all be run concurrently. But that way there's not confusion between different sites as it relates to the different properties. So the first one that I will discuss is at 1125 North Dodge. Again, it is a special exception to allow a drive-through use, specifically for their Aisles Online program. So 1125 North Dodge is, you can see the site plan above. So generally the grocery store is in the northeast corner of the site, parking's to the southeast of it. There are commercial and residential uses to the south. To the east is institutional and commercial uses. And then as you look west and northwest, especially, there's some single family residential uses as well. To the south, most of those, there are a couple single family residential uses, but most of it is commercial. And then to the east is the former Hy-Vee site there. The site is currently zoned community commercial. So similar to the land uses, you have single family zones to the north and west. You have more CC2 to the south. You also have some multifamily zoning to the south where there's a cemetery, and then a neighborhood commercial zone to the east. So in terms of background, LT Leon Associates had applied on behalf of Hy-Vee for the Aisles Online drive-throughs. There is a grocery store that's on the property that I mentioned. It's about 57,000 square feet, constructed in 2014. The lot itself is obviously larger at about 6.27 acres, but the drive-through facility would only be located in a small portion of that. The property was first zoned community commercial with a planned development overlay in 2013. that the OPD was required to accommodate sensitive features that are on the site, specifically hills. However, because of the conditions that were incorporated as part of that, they did need to rezone it. But overall, drive-through facilities are allowed by special exception. So in terms of their rezoning, the reason that it did not meet the conditions of the original conditional zoning agreement was because there was a condition that it had to match the site plan. And with adding in drive-through facilities, with adding in a new kiosk, staff didn't feel that that met the site plan. So the property was rezoned to the same zone, CC2 with an OPD, on August 17th, 2021 to revise that conditional zoning agreement. But there are still 5 conditions that are incorporated as part of that. So the first is that a buffer area screened the S3 standard shall be established along the western property line. A masonry wall shall be provided where the buffer is less than 35 feet. So that's not really affected by this proposed special exception. Second, that no signs are allowed in that 35-foot buffer or to the north or west of the convenience store, which is located on the southwest corner of the site, except for a monument sign, and no more than 2 freestanding signs along Dodge Street. And other signs are allowed per code. That one's not really incorporated in this as well. Third, that any structures, including canopies, shall be of a quality design appropriate for property abutting a residential neighborhood, including features such as masonry materials, standing seam metal roofs, and muted colors, and that designs must be approved by the design review committee prior to issuance of a building permit. That one is incorporated into this special exception because they're proposing a new building with a canopy. The fourth condition is that existing evergreen screening mature trees be preserved along the northwest side of the property where possible. And then finally, again, that development landscaping shall be consistent with the plan dated June 8, 2021. So the site plan that they submitted as part of this is the same that they had submitted for that rezoning.
Kirk, can you go back to the map and show us where they want to put this?
Yes. So it would be on this parking aisle closest to St. Clement Street. And I'll just skip ahead a sec because I have a kind of outlined area. So that would be the area that they're looking at. There is existing screening to the north, which I'll talk about in a little bit as well. And I'll show the site plan in a minute too.
So do they want to build a canopy over that whole thing?
No. So the canopy would be right over their unloading area. So they have basically 4 cars in a row that would be waiting, and then they have 2 loading zones in each lane, and then there would be 3 lanes in the drive-through. So taking a step back, for vehicular access to the site, there are 3 access points on North Dodge. The easternmost is only for loading, so that's not a public access point. And then there are also the 2 on St. Clement Street. They're connected by internal drives and east-west parking aisles. As far as pedestrian routes, there are 2 access points in North Dodge and 2 on St. Clement Street, similar locations. There are also pedestrian pathways along the front of the building. There's one that goes through the middle of the parking lot, and where those pedestrian paths pass, where they cross internal drives, they are demarcated by colored pavement currently. So as to the proposed drive-through, then it replaces that existing parking near St. Clement Street. So I already kind of described that. But it will also be pickup only, so there won't be any, there are no order boards or intercom systems proposed. And the site plan does include a pedestrian pathway that would allow employees to bring orders to the kiosk as well. So again, that north center part of the site, and it would be 3 drive-through lanes with kind of 2 parking stalls plus 4 stacking stalls behind them. And then there would be 3 lanes. There are also small parking areas in the entry and in the exit area. So you can see that it retains 2-way movement at the entry area and at the exit area, but the drive-through lane itself would be one directional from east to west.
So you said there was a sidewalk so
Yes,
that the employees could bring the groceries to the kiosk. Where is that
yep.
at?
So you can see that here built off of the existing sidewalk, which goes into the front of the store over here. to the east. And it does cross that internal drive. It's not really part of the drive-through area where that pedestrian path is marked as a crossing. And then it connects into their pavement marked area. That would be a clear zone for employees. And then the kiosk is slightly to the west of that.
So the area that is marked diagonally there in dark diagonal lines, what is that?
That's a painted clear zone. And that would include the lanes would be marked by paint as well, as would, you can see small sort of loading areas where employees could walk to the cars.
And the canopy would be over where they load?
Correct. And so the kiosk would block the canopy from that area as well, or from the residential area to the north. You wouldn't be able to see the canopy as much.
And it is lighted,
Say that again?
and it is lighted. The canopy has lights in it.
I believe so, yes. But the applicant can also speak to that as well. In terms of what it looks like today, so you can see right now it's just a parking aisle basically that would be replaced. They do have a temporary aisles on line building that you can see on the right side of the screen. It looks like a storage container right now. And then this is looking northeast towards the Hy-Vee. You can also see that a lot of these parking spaces are already reserved for aisles online customers that are parking there. As for current screening, this is looking south. There is existing screening. The application states that it would replace it currently if they can retain it, as long as they have a landscaping plan that meets the ST or the applicable standard, then that would be fine. But they would have to meet the applicable standard for screening. And then this is looking west where you can see the residences across St. Clements Street and the screening as well. And then this is what that pedestrian crossing currently looks like, but it is slightly outside of the area. And then they did also submit a concept that shows the kiosk and the canopy. So you can see that the canopy really only covers a few of the parking areas. It doesn't extend the length of the kiosk, and there are no windows in the kiosk, but it would have obviously doors for storage of their orders.
Stands far enough so that people who are loading groceries would be underneath a roof if it was raining, or so that they wouldn't get wet, or if they're opening up a trunk, the trunk would get wet.
I believe that is correct, yeah.
That's the main thing. Okay.
It's the role of the board. The board is charged with approving with conditions or denying the applications based on the facts presented tonight. Again, it has to meet all applicable approval criteria, both specific standards pertaining to the drive-through facility and then the general standards that apply to all special exceptions. So one of the reasons we wanted to run these all at once is just because with specific standards for drive-throughs, they can be long. There are kind of three subsections of them for access and circulation, location, and design standards. And as we proceed down to further applications, I will try to abridge my comments as much as possible for your sake. But the first one regarding access and circulation at 14.4C2K3A is that the transportation system should be capable of safely supporting the proposed drive-through use in addition to the existing uses in the area. Evaluation factors include street capacity and level of service, effects on traffic circulation, access requirements, separation of curb cuts, and pedestrian safety, in addition to the following criteria. First, wherever possible and practical, drive-through lanes shall be accessed from secondary streets, alleys, or shared cross-access drives. Again, the public access points for the property, there are two off North Dodge and two on St. Clement Street. Both of those are local streets, but those access points are connected by north-south internal drives and then parking aisles as well. So in this case, the proposed use is access from an internal cross-access drive, not directly from a street. And it would exit into a surface parking lot. So while there are two small parking areas that have two-way access, there does appear to be sufficient room for maneuvering, and the drive-through lanes are one way, as I discussed. So in terms of what those access points look like, I just kind of wanted to map that out for simplicity's sake. So you can see the 5 different access points. The 4 to the west are the ones that are public. You can see north-south cross access drives and the east-west parking aisles in blue. And then the pedestrian routes are in orange. They basically go through the edge of the property and through the center as well. But those pedestrian paths aren't really affected by the project. It's that parking aisle that's closest to St. Clement Street. So you can see that it comes in off the access drive. The second criteria is that to provide for safe pedestrian movement, the number and width of curb cuts serving the use may be limited. In this case, no changes to curb cuts are being proposed. As far as safe pedestrian movements, pedestrian access will be retained and a sidewalk route will be added for aisles online or to that kiosk for employees. The existing route already has colored pavement where it crosses the internal drive, and that crossing is approximately 20 feet long. There will also be additional painted areas that will provide access from the kiosk to individual cars to facilitate safety while loading orders.
Are you referring here to the crossing across St. Clement? Or is this within the,
It's within the parking area. It's that internal drive. Let me pull up the site plan again. First.
wait, oh,
Yeah, so this is the internal drive. It's not a crossing on St. Clement Street.
okay.
But yes, that's what I'm referring to, the existing ped crossing.
That's within the parking lot?
Yes, or it's an access drive. So if you look at this, it's right at that access point, but St. Clement Street technically curves north. It doesn't continue straight.
Oh.
The third criteria is related to stacking spaces, that there has to be enough that safety is not compromised. A minimum of 4 is recommended for non-food related drive-through facilities. The board may reduce the number of stacking spaces if the applicant can demonstrate that the specific business has unique characteristics such that the recommended number of spaces is excessive. So again, there are 3 drive-through lanes with 6 stacking spaces each. So that's a total of 18 vehicles that can stack there. The facility is for pickup only, not ordering, so it does meet that required minimum. Peak hours provided by the applicant are estimated 4 to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, so business days as people are getting off of work. And the drive-through lanes, staff believes, are far enough from the access drive to accommodate some potential spillover traffic, which minimizes safety impacts. But staff does also recommend substantial compliance with the site plan as a condition of approval to ensure that the traffic safety is not compromised. Fourth criteria is that sufficient on-site signage of pavement marking shall be provided to indicate direction of vehicular travel, pedestrian crossings, stop signs, no entrance areas, other controls for safe pedestrian vehicular movement. So there are directional arrows at all drive-through entrances and exits. There's signage to direct vehicles to the drive-through. The canopy also serves as wayfinding. And then pavement markings denote the drive-through lanes and loading areas, and there are no pedestrian routes that cross the drive-through lanes. Where there is a pedestrian crossing to the north, it is demarcated with colored pavement to promote safe pedestrian movement, so staff believes that this criteria is met. With regards to location, where drive-throughs are allowed, there's a location standard that drive-through lanes and service windows must be located on a non-street facing facade unless the applicant can demonstrate that a street-facing location is preferable for the overall safety and efficiency of the site, does not conflict with adjacent uses or pedestrian access, and does not compromise the character of the streetscape or neighborhood in which it is located. In this case, the drive-through lanes are on the non-street facing side of the kiosk. And then second, that drive-through lanes have to be set back at least 10 feet from adjacent lot lines and public rights of way and screened from view. I'll talk about screening in a little bit, but drive-through lanes are approximately 30 feet from St. Clement Street, and they will be screened by the kiosk and landscaping, which would be the S3 standard because it's residential uses across the street. And staff would review that at the time of site plan review when we would receive a landscaping plan that would detail screening standards. And then with regards to the design standards, The number of drive-through lanes, stacking spaces, and paved area necessary for the drive-through facility will not be detrimental to adjacent residential properties or detract from or unduly interrupt pedestrian circulation or the commercial character of the area in which it is located. The board may adjust standards as it always may. So as far as the substandards within this one, to promote compatibility with surrounding development, the number of drive-through lanes should be limited such that the amount of paving and stacking spaces does not diminish the design quality of the streetscape or safety of the pedestrian environment. In this case, the drive-through lane is proposed in a north central location across from St. Clement Street from some single-family uses, from some duplexes. Again, it's got those 3 10 to 12-foot wide drive-through lanes, partially under an awning with the kiosk. And most of the paving does replace existing paving. There are 2 parking islands that are proposed to be removed that are somewhat affected by the project. Staff does talk about that a little bit later as well. But because it is across the street from residential uses, S3 screening is required. So the landscaping along St. Clement Street would be replaced per the site plan. But there does have to be compliance with parking landscaping standards. Those are located at 14.5A.5I. So basically says, I'll talk about it a little later again, but all parking spaces have to be within a certain distance of trees. Because they're removing islands that have trees in them, they may not comply with that. So they would have to make sure that their site plan complies with those standards. But again, that would be reviewed partially at site plan. In addition, the conditional zoning agreement, CZA, requires a staff review of the kiosk, ensuring that the design is appropriate for property near residential neighborhoods. I already talked about that a little bit, but that would be required prior to issuance of a building permit. And staff also does believe that the proposed improvements will maintain safety and not negatively affect the streetscape or pedestrian environment. So staff believes that this criteria is met. Second, drive-through lanes, bays, and stacking spaces shall be screened from views from the street and adjacent properties to the S2 standard unless it's located across from residential property, and then it must be S3. So as I mentioned, St. Clement Street would need to be screened to the S3 standard, although part of the drive-through lanes would be screened by the kiosk, and the rest would be that future landscaping then that would be incorporated in the landscaping plan. Third, multiple windows servicing a single stacking lane should be considered to reduce the amount of idling on site. This is a pickup only location, and employees come out to cars to load vehicles. So there are no windows that are provided, but they do provide multiple lanes. And they also use incremental time slots to try and reduce idling on site. 4, stacking spaces, driveways, and drive-through windows shall be located to minimize potential for vehicular and pedestrian conflicts, shall be integrated into the surrounding landscape and streetscape design of the neighborhood in which it is located. The proposed project creates no new vehicular and pedestrian conflicts. However, there will be employees going into the parked areas, so there are some new conflicts that are created. But it's only where employees load vehicles, and that's relatively sporadic. It doesn't affect pedestrian access. There may also be some conflicts between vehicles accessing the drive-through lanes and those accessing the parking at the entry and the exits. But staff does believe that there's adequate room to maneuver, and there's adequate signage and pavement markings to help direct traffic properly. And again, the CZA design review condition helps ensure that the building is integrated into the surrounding streetscape. And the proposed facility is similar to existing uses, which are auto-oriented parking. So staff believes that the proposed use will be consistent. Fifth, that lighting for the drive-through must comply with outdoor lighting standards and must be designed to prevent light trespass and glare onto neighboring residential properties. So there is a photometric plan that's submitted as part of the application, but generally new lighting is reviewed at site plan review. So if there are issues there, they would need to address it to meet our code standards. 6 is a condition that was repealed. So the final one for the specific conditions is that loudspeakers or intercom systems, if allowed, should be located and directed to minimize disturbance to adjacent uses, with special consideration given to uses next to residential uses. So there are no loudspeakers or intercom systems as part of this project, but staff does recommend a condition that no external loudspeakers or intercom systems be installed to mitigate any future issues. In terms of this condition, all three of the applications kind of have these findings in this condition, so I will gloss over that again in the future. As far as the general standards, the 7 general standards for this specific site at 1125 North Dodge. First, that these specific proposed special exception will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, comfort, or general welfare. The facility isn't actually expected to increase traffic to the site because it should replace in-store trips. So that should minimize some of the issues that could be perceived with traffic. And as far as circulation goes and access, staff believes that it is adequate for drive-through traffic as long as it conforms to that site plan as submitted. And staff does also recommend that drive-through lanes remain pickup only to help keep traffic flow smooth rather than installing future things for remote systems. No new vehicular and pedestrian conflicts are created by the proposed facility, again, except where vehicles will be loaded by employees. And so while there are some potential conflicts between vehicles that are parking and vehicles utilizing the drive-through lanes, staff doesn't see that as an issue. So staff believes that this criteria is met. The second condition is regarding whether the use will be injurious to the use and enjoyment of property in the immediate vicinity or affect property values negatively. Screening and the kiosk will mitigate impacts to the streetscape and adjacent properties. Again, the conditional zoning agreement does require that design review. So staff would review that prior to issuance of a building permit. And in this case, the proposed facility is adjacent to residential uses. So staff recommends that the hours of operation be limited for it from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. weekdays and from 6 a.m. To 10 p.m. on weekends to mitigate any potential noise impacts. And again, no loudspeakers or intercom systems are provided as part of this project. Next, as to whether it will affect development or improvement of surrounding properties. The area is fully developed, mix of uses, residential, commercial, and institutional, and staff doesn't believe that redevelopment would be affected. As to whether there's adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, or necessary facilities. Again, it's a developed area. It's got access to all necessary facilities and can meet proposed site requirements. Pedestrian access is maintained and internal circulation is sufficient. The project will include relocating an electric vehicle charging station that's currently on the site and a light pole / vertical wind turbine, but that would be reviewed as part of site plan review, and they are showing that it would be moved. Fifth, regarding traffic congestion in public streets, there is adequate space for 18 vehicles to stack in the drive-through lanes, some additional space for overflow. Everything's accessed from internal drives, exits into the parking area, and there's signage and pavement markings to help direct traffic. So staff doesn't believe that it's going to affect anything on public streets, ingress or egress. 6, that it conforms with all other zoning standards. As far as parking goes, it has more than enough parking. 215 parking spaces would be retained, which is well above the 189 spaces, even after losing an entire parking aisle. There are 2 tree planters that would be removed. And the section that I had previously mentioned, 14.5A or 5I, requires that every parking space is within 40 feet of a small tree or 60 feet of a large tree. So depending on the size of the trees that are being retained along the street, new planters may be needed to comply with the standards. That would be reviewed as part of the landscaping plan during site plan review. Again, there's the CZA requirement for design review to ensure that it's compatible with adjacent residential neighborhoods, and other standards would be reviewed during site plan and building permit review. And then finally, that the proposed exception will be consistent with the comprehensive plan of the city. So the comprehensive plan, future land use map shows this as general commercial. The North District plan shows it as retail community commercial. And the comprehensive plan supports encouraging the retention and expansion of existing businesses. So the current land use is consistent and it won't change because of the approved exception. So staff believes that that is met. As a result, staff does recommend approval of EXC 21-0003 to allow a drive-through facility for property at 1125 North Dodge, subject to 4 conditions, which is substantial compliance with the site plan submitted as part of the application, that the drive-through lanes remain pickup only, that external loudspeakers or intercom systems are prohibited in the future, and that the hours of operation are limited 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekdays and from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. on weekends. Do you have any questions on this one before I jump into the next?
I have a question on the hours of operation. So this one, it talks about the hours of operation. There's no mention of hours of operation on the other 2. So is there a certain standard for all of them, or does it vary, or?
So there's not a standard. The special exception is a discretionary process. In this case, the use is directly adjacent to residential uses. In the other cases, the drive-through facilities are across the street from commercial uses predominantly. And so staff believed that it was appropriate in this case and not in the other cases. But if the board would like to, you could add time limitations on other ones as well, but it's mostly due to abutting use or surrounding uses.
So what is the hours of operation for that store?
Staff did not look at that. The hours of operation do fit within the hours expected by the applicant, though. The other part of it is that store hours may change, but this condition would follow the property if there were new owners or if the hours changed.
I have one other question, and I don't know if I should ask you or the applicant about the lighting.
That would be a better question for the applicant. The chair, you are able to, do you want the applicant to speak after each? Should we have the applicant speak at the end towards all of them? I'll leave that up to you.
Let's go ahead and just gather your questions, and then we'll just have the applicant speak at the end of all of them.
Okay, with that, I'll move on to EXC 21-0004, unless there are any more questions from the board. Okay, so this is a similar use at 1720 Waterfront Drive. This is located south of Highway 6 East. Again, the grocery store is at the center south side of the site with parking to the north. It's pretty much commercial uses all around, and the zoning map reflects that. So you can see it's community commercial for most of the area with some intensive commercial uses to the south. As far as where the proposed drive-through lane is, it's directly east of the building, and it would be the parking aisle that is closest to the building. So again, a similar process, but for 1720 Waterfront Drive. In this case, the grocery store is larger at 96,000 square feet, and the lot is 8.6 acres, zoned community commercial. This one was initially built in 1996 and expanded in 2010, so a little older. But again, it is surrounded predominantly by commercial uses rather than having some residential uses nearby. As far as vehicular access for the site, there are 3 access points on Boyram Street and 3 on Waterfront Drive. In this case, the internal drives are east-west with north-south parking aisles, and the loading area is west of the building. As for pedestrian routes on this site, there are 2 access points on Boyram Street and 1 on Waterfront Drive. And they both connect to the pedestrian area north of building, runs directly along the building face. And the route along the building face is demarcated by bollards along the building and by colored pavement where it crosses internal drive aisles. So I'll show pictures of that in a minute. As far as the proposed drive-through use, this one would be 4 lanes. It would also be accessed from an internal drive to the north. It would be a 1 direction to the south, which would allow egress onto Boyram Street at that southernmost access point. There would be an addition as part of this that would be included on the building. It would also include a canopy as well, but it is currently proposed with no order boards or intercom systems, and the proposal does not affect pedestrian facilities, but it would include the construction of a new landscaped median. So this is that area directly east of the building, and you can see the parking aisle closest to the building is what would be replaced. So there would be 4 drive-through lanes. This one would only have 5 cars that would be stacked. So you would have 3 cars and then again, 2-car loading area. There'd be a landscaped medium between these drive-through lanes and the parking aisle that would be retained to the east. And in this case, both the entry and exit would be one directional because there isn't parking at the entry or exit. But there would also be a canopy again in this location.
So with this, there would be 2 canopies, so you could load a car and a car behind it at the same time.
There's only the one canopy. So in this case, it basically covers that walkway. If you look at the site plan, it's directly over that south painted walkway that they're showing on the plan. It's shown as dotted lines approximately here.
Okay.
So this is that area looking west towards the building. The addition would be kind of on the south side of those awnings. This is looking southeast towards the other side. You can see again that much of the area is already dedicated to aisles online parking. This is looking east across the street. So you can see the existing landscaping that is currently there. And you can see on the other side that there are commercial uses. The parking on this side of the drive aisle would be retained. And this is just looking along that buffer area where you can see the sidewalk. This is looking south. You can see the landscaping again. And then the existing pedestrian route would be maintained as part of the current project as proposed. And then here you can see the awning would cover, one area of parking where there's the walkway. And you are charged with the same things with specific criteria and general criteria located at 14.4C2K3. So first, regarding access and circulation, has to be accessed from secondary streets, alleys, or shared cross access drives. The property is accessed from those 3 points on Boyram Street, which is a local street, and 3 on Waterfront Drive, which is also a local street. They're connected by east-west internal drives. And it's from one of those internal drives, specifically the one closest to the building, that this one-way would be accessed. It would also exit into an internal drive as well, which would be the southmost one, but that would basically dump you out directly onto either Boyram Street, or you could go north again through the parking aisle. So again, you can see the 6 access points in yellow. With drive aisles across the property, and then you have parking aisles in blue that provide access through the parking area. And it's the one directly east of the Waterfront Highview that would be affected. And then pedestrian access, you can see in orange, goes along the outside of the property. There's a route through the middle as well. But those routes are not proposed to be affected as part of the project. So the next criteria is regarding safe pedestrian movement and curb cuts. So no changes to curb cuts are being proposed, nor are any changes to the existing pedestrian route. So the route is already marked with colored pavement where it crosses the drive aisle. The crossings are approximately 25 to 35 feet long, but it is demarcated, which provides for safe pedestrian access. And again, no new conflicts are created. There's already a parking aisle crossing there. As far as accessing the kiosk, that is conducted through the store for employees. And then there are the additional painted areas providing access from the addition to the individual cars to safely load orders. With regard to stacking spaces, there are 4 drive-through lanes, each with 5 stacking spaces, so 20 total. The drive-through facility is for pickup only, not ordering. So this is adequate for the use that is being proposed. Again, peak hours are the same after work, 4 to 6, Monday through Friday. And again, drive-through lanes are far enough away from the access drive to accommodate some limited spillover traffic. It's not as much room as in the North Dodge case, but you could probably fit 1 or 2 cars if there were issues. But staff does recommend substantial compliance with the site plan as a condition of approval again. As far as on-site signage and pavement markings for vehicular travel, pedestrian crossings, stop signs, et cetera. There are directional arrows at all access points and drive-through lanes. Drive-through lanes are denoted with pavement markings as well. And as far as signage, there's signage to direct folks to the entry, and there's a do not enter sign at the exit. And then for crossover between the parking aisle and the drive-through lanes, there's a landscape planner that would be installed. And the pedestrian parking or the pedestrian crossings are already made with colored concrete, which helps ensure safe pedestrian movement. With regard to the location standards, first, that it is on a street facing location unless it's proved preferable otherwise. In this case, it is on the Boyrum street facing facade, which staff believes is preferable for the safety and efficiency of the site since it will utilize that existing building facade and it does not affect the pedestrian access at all. Again, the neighborhood is commercial and the facility will be replacing existing car-oriented uses and will enhance existing landscaping. So staff doesn't believe that that'll impact surrounding properties negatively. But to ensure a consistent view shed for the streetscape, similar to the Imon project, staff recommends that the new addition harmonize with the existing building as it relates to materials, colors, textures, lines, and masses to be reviewed during site plan review. Second, for location, that the drive-through lanes are set back at least 10 feet. These drive-through lanes are set back about 100 feet and they'll be screened both by the existing screening on the street or on the Boyrum Street right of way, but also by trees that are shown in their new landscape planter. And the landscape plan will be submitted as part of site plan review. And then regarding design standards and compatibility with surrounding uses. Again, the proposed drive-through facility is east of the building, but it is across Boyrum Street from commercial uses. There are those 4 lanes with the partial awning and the addition as well, but nearly all paving replaces existing paving. And screening is required between the lanes and Boyrum Street through both the existing landscaping and through additional trees that are shown in the new landscaping median. In addition, the existing pathways already has colored concrete, which facilitates safe pedestrian access. And where the pedestrian crossing is located, cars will be turning into that area. So they would already be looking to yield, which will help maintain pedestrian safety. And the proposed improvements will help maintain the safety of those utilizing the walkway and won't affect the quality of the streetscape. As far as screening, to the S2 standard in this case, there aren't residential uses across the street through both existing and additional landscaping that's proposed. So staff believes that this is met. With regard to drive-through windows, it's basically the same as the North Dodge site. It's pickup only. They use incremental slots to reduce idling, and there aren't windows. With regards to minimizing vehicular and pedestrian conflicts and integrating in the surrounding streetscape, there aren't any new vehicular and pedestrian conflicts that are created, except for areas where employees will load vehicles. And the landscape medium does reduce the potential for vehicular conflicts as well. Staff believes that the recommended conditions are enough to ensure that it meets the neighborhood. And then lighting has to comply with outdoor lighting standards, same as North Dodge. There's a photometric plan that's submitted as part of the application, but staff will review new lighting for compliance with site development standards in the code. And the final specific criteria is that loudspeakers or intercom systems should be located to minimize disturbances to adjacent uses. Staff recommends the same conditions as North Dodge, where there are no loudspeakers or intercom systems as part of the project. And then for the general standards at 14.4B3, affecting health, safety, public comfort, or general welfare, it's not expected to increase vehicular trips. The circulation is adequate for the site. Staff recommends the same conditions with regards to that the lanes remain pickup only and otherwise believes that these conditions are met. Second, that it won't injure the use or enjoyment of surrounding property. So screening will help mitigate impacts to the streetscape and adjacent properties. And the uses are consistent with those adjacent properties. So the conditions as recommended will help ensure that this is met as well. So staff believes that this condition is met. Third, that it won't affect development on surrounding properties. It's already fully developed and won't affect development on surrounding properties. With regards to, again, infrastructure, the fourth criteria, they're already provided for the site and the pedestrian access will be maintained, but otherwise staff will ensure compliance during site plan review. As far as ingress or egress on public streets, there's adequate space for 20 vehicles in the drive-through lane, limited space for overflow, and there's adequate pavement and signage markings to direct traffic. So staff doesn't believe that it's going to affect public streets at all. 6, with regard to special exception, that all other conditions or all other standards in the zoning code are met. Again, parking is more than adequate for the site, even with the loss of a parking aisle, and other standards will be reviewed during site plan review, but staff did not notice any potential issues at this moment. And then finally, regarding comprehensive plan, it shows this area as general commercial. The South District plan shows this as commercial, and the other findings are the same as for North Dodge, that it won't change the use of the site. So staff does recommend approval of EXC 21-0004 to allow drive-through facility at 1720 Waterfront Drive, subject to 4 conditions. So again, substantial compliance with the site plan, the drive-through lanes remain pickup only, prohibiting installation of external loudspeakers and intercom systems. And the new one is that the new building addition must harmonize with the existing buildings on the site as it relates specifically to materials, colors, textures, lines, and masses to be determined during site plan review. Any questions on this item? Hearing none, I will move forward, which is EXC 21-0014 at 812 South First Avenue, that high V, which is located north of Muscatine Avenue, east of South First Avenue. The building is again in the center of the site. You can see that there's open space to the north and parking to the south. Much of that area to the north is open space due to sensitive features, so it does have the Ralston Creek South Branch. But there are some cemetery and multifamily uses to the east, single-family uses to the north and northwest, and then commercial uses to the west and to the south. As far as zoning, it is zoned community commercial again, along with properties to the south and to the directly to the west. There's some single-family zoning to the northwest and to the north, and some multifamily zoning to the east. This community commercial zone does have a design review overlay because it's part of the Town Crest Design Review District. So that requires staff review of proposed buildings, landscaping, parking. That is a separate process. And as far as where the drive-through facility is, it's directly west of the existing building. So this grocery store is 66,000 square feet, built in 1997, expanded in 2001. Surrounded by a variety of uses, as I mentioned. As far as vehicular access points, there are 3 off First Ave and 1 on Muscatine Avenue. There are 2 east-west internal drives connected by north-south parking aisles. But there is a parking aisle west of the building that connects the northernmost First Ave access point, and that's where they would propose their facility. Pedestrian routes are provided at 2 access points on South First Avenue, but they are generally not demarcated where they cross vehicular drives on the property. So the proposed drive-through facility replaces existing parking west of the building on South First Avenue with 2 drive-through lanes. It does make use of some existing drive-through lanes at the south of the building. We kind of rope them around the building, as I'll show it in a minute. It would be one direction from north to south. And the parking aisle, there would also be a parking aisle to the west of that. That would also be one direction from north to south. Again, no proposed order boards or intercom systems. But the site plan does show demarcated pedestrian crossings from the west, which would be an improvement over the current site. So again, the yellow box west of the building shows approximately where it would be, and the site plan is visible here. So you can see that the two drive-through lanes would basically wrap around the west building face, would be integrated into the existing drive-through lanes that are south of the building, and would exit southeast into that internal drive aisle just south of the building. It would also convert the parking aisle one direction from north to south. So there would be no access to the parking aisles through the parking lot. You would have to go onto First Ave if you were in the parking facility. But I believe that the intent is most people who would attend, again, would replace their trips to the store. And so that wouldn't be a concern. And you can see the demarcated pedestrian pathways as well.
Show me those demarcated.
Yes, so the northernmost one, which would come from the trail, they're showing a painted crosswalk. And to the south, which would directly cross the lanes, would be painted crosswalks as well, with a small pedestrian island between the parking aisle to the west and to the drive-through facilities to the east.
So that would take you,
That would take you to a door that is currently located here, facing west. And staff does have a condition regarding that as well, depending on whether that's open to public access or not. So this is what it currently looks like. It's that north-south parking drive aisle right there. This is looking north. You can see the open space trees to the north that wouldn't be affected by the project. This is looking to the south towards the building. So you can see the existing canopy that would be incorporated. And here is looking east at the existing canopy. So there are currently two drive-through lanes. Those would just be extended and wrap around along the west building face. This is what the screening currently looks like, looking north. So you can see those trees that currently exist, but it would need to be enhanced to meet the S2 standard. The top pictures are looking west, so you can see that there are commercial uses directly across First Avenue. The bottom pictures are looking north, so you can see some single family uses, and you can see primarily the screening in that open space on the bottom right picture. The bottom left picture is looking to the northwest at adjacent residential uses. And for pedestrian routes, this is the pedestrian route that currently exists along the building that would be preserved as part of the project. The northernmost access point, this is what it currently looks like. You can see that it has no pavement markings. So those would be marked as part of the project. And this is looking west at the southernmost pedestrian access. So that would also be marked as part of the project. In the foreground is where that pavement marking would be.
I'm confused as to where this is.
This is looking west from the parking drive aisle. So
Okay. So this is the main entrance exit on.
Yeah,
right there.
this
Okay.
would be the main pedestrian entrance and exit. And this is the door that I was referring to. It currently appears to be closed to public access, but staff is still waiting on confirmation that that would remain closed as part of this project.
It
And
would remain closed.
staff is waiting on confirmation of that, but we include a condition in case it does remain closed. And staff believes that there's reason to believe that it might, because it would make sense for employees to have their own route to get to the cars. And this is the current pedestrian access from the west into the First Avenue main entrance. You can see that there really isn't a pedestrian access way to access it. So staff does include a condition regarding that to provide some sort of pedestrian access if that door does not remain open. So the role of the board is the same regarding specific and general standards, with the specific standards being those related to drive-through facilities. So the first set are related to access and circulation. And that first, wherever possible and practical, they must be accessed from secondary streets. So access to this facility is from the north. It is from what is technically a parking aisle, but there are those three access points on South First Avenue, which is a minor arterial. There's one access point on Muscatine Avenue to the south, which is a minor arterial. And those access points are connected by east-west internal drives and parking aisles as well. So again, it would be accessed from South First Avenue and could only be accessed from South First Avenue, but it is technically accessed through a parking aisle, so it meets this standard. It cannot be directly accessed from a street. And as far as it exits into the internal aisle and does not exit into an internal street. So with the diagram, again, you can see the 3 access points on South First Avenue and the one on Muscatine in yellow. There's a parking aisle from the northernmost, which would be replaced as part of the project directly west of the building. Otherwise, you can see the aisles and the drives. And pedestrian access basically has 2 routes along the outside, one along the building face to the west, and one directly east from the sidewalk. So the project proposes that both of those would be marked with pavement markings. Second, to provide safe pedestrian movement, the number and width of curb cuts serving the use may be limited. There are no changes to curb cuts being proposed, but the existing pedestrian routes aren't currently marked where they cross existing aisles. So the southernmost pedestrian route would cross the drive-through facility. The site plan shows that that would be striped. I would propose that the crossings are about 16 to 24 feet long with an island in the middle for pedestrians. The northern route would not cross the facility, but it would be striped where it crosses the drive, and that crossing is about 25 feet long. As far as stacking spaces, the 2 drive-through lanes each have about 9 stacking spaces for a total of 18. Meets the required number of spaces, and they are for pickup only, not ordering. Peak hours are the same. It is, again, far enough from the access drive that it would minimize traffic safety impacts, and staff recommends compliance with the site plan to ensure traffic safety is not compromised. As far as sufficient on-site signage and pavement markings, there are directional arrows shown at all access points. Directional arrows denote drive-through lanes, pavement markings denote drive-through lanes. There's a separated curb to separate the drive-through facility from the parking drive aisle that would be to the west. And there's signage that would directly direct you to the entrance, and there's do not enter signs at the exit where they would not be able to move north from the rest of the parking lot. Otherwise, pedestrian crossings would also be marked as part of this project, which helps ensure safe pedestrian movement. For location standards, it is on the street facing facade again for First Avenue, but it will utilize the existing building facade that is there. So for that reason, staff believes that it's preferable for the overall safety and efficiency of the site. It generally improves pedestrian access, so staff also sees that as beneficial. There are areas to the north that are residential, but the area directly across from South First Ave is commercial. So it does trigger the S2 standard, which is slightly less than the S3 standard. Again, the drive-through use will replace car-oriented uses, so it won't particularly affect the neighborhood character. And the property is in the Towncrest Design Review District. So staff would review any new structures, any new parking areas consistent with the Towncrest Design Review Plan that was adopted by the city. So that helps ensure consistency with surrounding properties as well. The drive-through lanes also have to be set back 10 feet. In this case, they're set back 40 feet from First Avenue, and it must be screened to the S2 standard because it's commercial uses across the street, and a landscape plan will be submitted as part of site plan review. And then with design standards, looking at compatibility with surrounding development and the amount of drive-through lanes may be limited for parking or for paving. The building is west of the building in the center of the site, across South First Avenue from commercial uses. The 2 drive-through lanes are about 12 feet wide along the west edge of the existing building, and it does utilize the existing awning. So there are relatively limited changes to the streetscape in those regards. There's also S2 screening required along the South First Avenue right-of-way. So the existing landscaping would need to be enhanced with that because the current screening does not meet the standard. The pedestrian pathways would also be enhanced as part of the project with striping where it crosses drives and a small pedestrian island by the drive-through facility, which will help maintain safety for those utilizing pedestrian routes. Again, would need to be screened to the S2 standard if adjacent to commercial uses, or if adjacent to residential uses to the S3 standard. There are residential uses to the northwest, but directly across the street are commercial uses, and so it would only trigger the S2 standard. So based on the landscaping plan submitted, staff believes that this standard is met. With regards to windows servicing the drive-through lane, they're the same conditions as related to 1125 North Dodge and 1720 Waterfront Drive. And with regards to minimizing potential vehicular and pedestrian conflicts and integrating in the surrounding streetscape. Again, there are no new conflicts created. There are existing pedestrian routes that cross it already. And there is a curb being proposed between the drive-through and parking aisle that should reduce potential vehicular conflicts. Areas where employees will load cars will again be there. That would be a potential conflict, but is relatively minor. There may be potential conflicts created where vehicles exit the drive-through because they have to cross the existing drive aisle. Where the drive-through lanes currently are, this would reverse the direction of traffic. But the cars will leave straight ahead. They'll be leaving one at a time, and the area has slow traffic speeds already. That's the primary area where pedestrians are crossing already. So staff believes that this helps ensure traffic safety such that the standard is met. There's also landscaping that'll be enhanced as part of the project with regards to the surrounding neighborhood. And the project is subject to the Towncrest design review that I already mentioned. And is similar to current auto-oriented uses on the site. But overall, staff believes that those vehicular and pedestrian conflicts shall be minimized to the extent possible. With lighting, the same findings, staff makes the same findings as the other two applications. And with regards to loudspeakers or intercom systems, staff makes the same recommendation, including the same condition regarding future loudspeakers or intercoms. And then for general standards, shall not endanger health, safety, comfort, or general welfare. Pretty similar findings and conditions, not expected to increase vehicular traffic, no new conflicts created that are of significant concern to staff, and the condition to ensure smooth traffic flow by not allowing or by retaining pickup only status. There may be some potential vehicular conflicts that I already mentioned. In addition to where cars exit, the entrance point is also where there's currently the loading area. But again, there's adequate room to maneuver. Staff believes that the pavement markings and signage will help direct traffic. Loading times can be coordinated with pickup times as well. So staff believes that all of those things can be worked around by the applicant. And the other issue that we had touched on briefly was the existing pedestrian route leads to a door that currently is not available to the public. Staff is waiting on confirmation that won't be open to the public, but just to be safe, to ensure that there is a safe pedestrian route. If it's closed, staff recommends that there be a complete demarcated pedestrian route, at least 4 feet in width from the sidewalk to the interior of the building, to be reviewed as part of that design review process. And that standard would be similar to what would be incorporated into a Towncrest design review anyway, since you're looking at the parking areas and access and all of those things. So staff believes that that's an appropriate place to include the condition, but just ensuring that it's there so that it will be reviewed. As far as effects on surrounding properties, screening will be enhanced. That will help mitigate impacts to the streetscape. And it's in the Towncrest Design Review District, so it will be reviewed subject to those standards as well. Also the condition regarding loudspeakers and the intercom systems as well. With regards to surrounding development, ensuring that it can occur. It's already a fully developed area, again, mix of residential, commercial, and institutional uses. And staff doesn't believe that any future development would be affected by the proposed special exception. It's already a developed area, so with regard to the infrastructure criteria, This one actually provides an additional benefit in that it includes pedestrian striping and a condition for pedestrian access to the primary building. So staff believes that this condition is met. The project will also include relocating an existing bicycle rack, but that will be required due to the bicycle parking requirements in the code. With regards to ingress or egress on public streets, again, there's adequate space for more than 18 vehicles to stack with some limited space for overflow, similar to the waterfront case. Where the drive-through lane exits, they have to cross the access drive, but that shouldn't affect ingress or egress on public streets, and it should be possible to exit safely. In addition, signage and pavement markings help direct traffic. And so based on the application is submitted, staff doesn't anticipate any issues. Also has to apply with all of the conditions. Again, this one has an access to parking, so that standard is met. But the parking areas were developed prior to current zoning standards. So where pavement is replaced, they're going to have to comply with current standards. So that should bring it up to code in that sense. And that will occur during site plan review, staff will review for those standards. And again, there's going to be a design review as part of the Town Crest Design Review District. So staff believes that this is met. There's also the South Branch Ralston Creek that I had mentioned to the north. That is a sensitive area. There's also the 100-year flood zone that is north of the property. So during site plan review, staff is going to ensure that work is conducted outside of those areas. If it is conducted within those areas, it actually requires a separate application for sensitive areas. So based on the site plan that's submitted, staff doesn't believe that's going to be an issue, but if it is impacted, they would require an additional application. But all other conditions or all other standards staff believes are met by the proposed site plan. And then with regards to the comprehensive plan, shown as general commercial in the comprehensive plan, the Southeast District Plan shows that it's commercial. And otherwise, there are the same standards that support this proposed use. So overall, staff does recommend approval of EXC 21-0014 to allow a drive-through facility at 812 South First Avenue, subject to 4 conditions. The first 3 are similar to the other ones. Substantial compliance with the site plan, the drive-through lanes remain pickup only, loudspeakers or intercom systems are prohibited. And then the 4th would be a separate one, that a complete demarcated pedestrian route at least 4 feet in width be provided from the sidewalk to the interior of the building to be approved as part of the design review process. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Kirk. Any questions for?
Take a drink now.
I forgot to fill up my glass, unfortunately, so.
Take a breath.
My goodness. Kirk, I have a question for you. And this is just kind of a general. When we talk about screening, landscaping and whatnot, is that just something the city or we get to just simply request at this point in time? Is it something the applicant is just offering up? I'm just curious between the difference of these parking lots versus parked cars versus stacked cars, the additional screening that's often talked about, and is it required? I'm just curious in general.
So screening standards change based on parking areas and drive-through areas, I believe slightly. But S2 standard is the general for areas around commercial uses, and then the S3 standard, which is slightly denser landscaping, is required for residential areas because they're a more sensitive use.
I see. Got it.
And in some cases, the board could, if they believe that a higher level of landscaping is required, they could say, we know it's commercial uses, but there's residential uses near-ish, and maybe it needs it. That is within the board's purview, as long as it's related to one of the approval criteria.
Sure. If the board found cars idling more unattractive than cars parked. So
Correct.
understood. All right. Any other questions for staff? All right. At this time, would someone from the applicant like to speak?
Good evening, everybody. My name is John Brehm. I'm Director of Site Planning for Hy-Vee. I'll start by just noting that we are in agreement with all of staff's recommendations on all three of these applications. So there's no issues there from our standpoint. And in the interest of time, I think maybe I'll just take your questions and answer any background information that you want and go from there.
I just have a general question about the lighting.
Sure.
Is the lighting on all the time, 24 hours a day, or is it on only when the kiosk is being used for loading, or I'm just,
The kiosk lighting can be turned off in the evening. We do leave our parking lot lights on, generally speaking, just for safety.
but the kiosk
But
lights.
the
would be
kiosk can be turned off
when it's not being
independently of the
Okay.
parking lot lights, yes.
Any other questions for the applicant?
So, the condition of a 4-foot walkway. Do we know where that sits? Is that still being reviewed by Hy-Vee?
On which project?
This would be in the First Avenue project.
Yeah, so with regards to that walkway, staff was, because there's a door, staff initially believed that that would provide public access until visiting the site, seeing that it didn't particularly appear to be a public walkway. So based on that, staff added the condition that it would be reviewed during the design review process, which would incorporate typically design review is the development services coordinator and building inspector and senior planner.
Yeah.
So there isn't an identified location for it. As long as they could provide a direct pedestrian access to,
So it's going to be, there will be an access to the interior somewhere.
Yes.
based on the condition, yeah.
Yeah, we can provide a way to the front of the store. And I need to check on the use of that particular door that's been referenced. I don't know if that's for public access or it's just employees. But either way, we can get a pedestrian access to the front.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak in favor of the application? Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak against the application? All right. Oh, please.
So I'm actually speaking on behalf of him. So
What's that name and
my name is Benjamin Samaniego and his is Jorge Medina. ¿Qué es la dirección? So he resides at 710 South First Street Avenue, and which is, if you, I don't know if you could, it's, there's like a little,
I could pull up a map for you.
yeah, that would be awesome. Sorry.
You reside at what address?
So he resides at 710.
Directly north of the subject property.
Yeah, so he just wanted to make sure that it wasn't gonna affect any of his property. He recently just purchased the property about a year ago, and they informed him when he was purchasing that he owns all the land up to like a little bridge pathway leading up to Hy-Vee. So he just was concerned over that fact that it wouldn't infringe on his property and, you know, take away from his property. So he just wants to make sure.
understood? Kirk, are we able to address that at all? I mean, there seems to be no, from what we can tell, when it's what's presented, there is no impact to that property to the north.
Correct. So where the proposed drive-through use is being located, I can draw it specifically on this map to make it a little clearer with regards to how that affects that property. So the proposed drive-through would basically be in this location directly west of the building. It would not affect access to First Avenue, and it would not affect any of the property to the north of that access point.
Nada más de lo que está pasando, no va a afectar ni el caminito ni nada de la propiedad que está pegada con nosotros. He just wanted to clarify because he received the mapping of the property line, so he just wants to, as on the picture that he received, the outline cuts like through his back porch, so he just wants to make
Oh.
sure
Gosh, yeah,
that it,
concerning.
yeah, so he just was concerned about that fact, so.
Yep, and I can speak to that too. In the mailing that was sent out, it included the property boundaries as shown in the property information viewer. That is not where the proposed, it's not the entire project that's being affected. It's only that area just west of the building.
That's the property line, not the project line.
Correct.
Okay.
And the project is truly just, we're not actually adding any structure on this building. It is simply converting parking lot to stacked spaces.
That is correct.
No le van a agregar nada más
I
acá
can
atrás.
also pull up.
No va a hacer nada que vaya a cruzar en su territorio, en su propiedad y nomás no le van a agregar ni un techo ni nada aquí en la Hy-Vee, sino que va a ser este camino. Van a entrar aquí del norte y van a salir del sur y van a estar entrando por este lado donde está ese techito. So, aquí van a salir los carros y después ahí van a buscar una manera para poder navegarlos para fuera del parque.
And I can also, this is the site plan. It doesn't show up as clearly up here as I would like, but the property in question would be directly north, basically up here. And you can see again, the parking aisle being replaced with drive-through lanes,
Ese va a ser el proyecto.
the parking aisle, but the access would remain the same.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Does the board have any additional comments for staff or the applicant? Items that need clarified? Otherwise, I'll close the public hearing. The public hearing is now closed. Will someone make a motion to approve the special exception to put on the table for discussion?
Are we going to do all three at the same time?
We're gonna do the
Uh,
EXC 21-003 first and then do them all separately.
I think we have to do them separately, correct, Sue?
At this point, we should, yes.
So 4B will be the one we'll be addressing first, and that's the 1125 North Dodge Street.
I move the approval of EXC 21-00003. Application submitted by LT Leon Associates for a special exception to allow drive-through facilities in the common commercial CC2 zone for online grocery pickup at Iowa City Hy-Vee number 3, located at 1125 North Dodge Street.
Is there a second? Thank you. Discussion amongst the board members?
Looks good to me.
I find that it does not interfere with other parts of the business. The restaurant, in this case, the restaurant is on the other end of the building. They can enter and exit. This is off sort of by itself. And so there may be some minor problems, but I think all in all, I really like this design.
Excellent.
And this is where the temporary thing is located right now.
Yeah.
Agreed. There's currently like a Band-Aid on this situation regarding the pandemic. It's probably even quite, more dangerous than we're talking about here. This is probably a way of making what's going on safer, in fact, I think. All right. No other discussion? Somebody want to make the findings of fact?
Regarding item EXC 21-0003, I concur with the findings set forth in the staff report of September the 8th, 2021, and conclude that the general and specific standards are satisfied unless amended or approved by another board member. I recommend the board adopt the findings in the staff report for the approval of this special exception.
I'll second.
All right, roll call.
Carlson,
Yes.
Priscillis,
Yes.
Parker, Pretorius,
Yes.
Russo,
Yes.
All right. This motion is declared approved. Any person desiring to appeal this decision to a court of record may do so within 30 days after the decision is filed with the city clerk's office. Right, moving on to item 4C. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the special exception to put on the table for discussion?
I move the approval of EXC 21-0004, application submitted by LT Leon Associates for a special exception to allow drive-through facilities in a CC2 zone for online grocery pickup at Iowa City Highway number 1 located at 1720 Waterfront Drive.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Any discussion?
Here again, I find this a wonderful plan. The restaurant and the deli are at the other end of the building. This is not going to impact the egress or ingress to the main entrances of the building. If you are a person parking in the parking lot and want to go into the store, you can do that and feel fairly safe.
Right? Any other discussion, or would a board member like to make the findings of fact?
Regarding item EXC 21-0004, I concur with the findings set forth in the staff report of September the 8th, 2021, and conclude that the general and specific standards are satisfied unless amended or opposed by another board member. I recommend the board adopt the findings in the staff report for the approval of this special exception.
All right. Do we need a second for this technically?
Not technically, but I think that's generally how the board is.
Okay.
is operating.
Is there a second for the findings of facts
I'll second it.
and roll call?
Carlson,
Yes.
Priscillis,
Yes.
Parker, Pretorius,
Yes.
Russo,
Yes.
Excellent. This motion is declared approved. Any person desiring to appeal this decision to a court of record may do so within 30 days after the decision is filed with the city clerk's office. Moving on to item 4D EXC 21-0014. Would a board member like to make a motion to approve the special exception?
I move the approval of EXC 21-0014, an application submitted by LT Leon Associates for a special exemption to allow drive-through facilities in the CC2 zone for online grocery pickup at Iowa City Highway number 2 located at 812 South First Avenue.
Is there a second?
Yes.
All right. Any discussion?
I'm somewhat uncomfortable with some of the aspects of this particular one. I'm very much concerned about about a person who is parked in the lot and wants to enter the store because of the fact that the exit to the drive-through is so close to the main entrance. That main entrance services the grocery store, Starbucks, the restaurant, the deli, the post office. There is an awful lot of pedestrian traffic right very close to where the cars come out. The cars can either make this really strange U-turn or else they have to cross the traffic and go down 2 lanes to get out of the parking lot. I go to that store all the time. I know what the traffic situation is like there. And this just makes me very, very nervous and I feel very uncomfortable about it. Right now, the temporary thing is between 2 of the entrances on First Avenue. It's usually where the landscaping thing is in the springtime. I don't know if that would be an alternative, but I read all these things about the truck traffic and that they would have to coordinate with that. And I just read, I don't see any of those comments in either of the other plans, which I feel are really, really great. But when it comes to this one, and I realize this is a much more challenging site, but I'm also concerned about the safety of the people who are going to be using the facility, who are going to be parking their cars and going into the facility.
Kirk, I think we have a picture of the front of the current covered space somewhere in here. There's currently a covered area, and I believe my knowledge of this is it serves pickup grocery, or it has historically, maybe still does to some degree. Is that, I mean, is that accurate?
You mean,
I do not believe this right there. Yeah, what is the area being used as right now? That covered space? Do we know?
It is a pickup, it is for pickup, but the cars do not exit out in front of this.
Yeah, so
entrance.
what is the
They-
difference between a car coming out of the parking lot to enter this space to pick up their groceries versus a car leaving the space with their groceries already in hand? I mean, what is really the difference? Are the cars traveling at different speeds? Are they any less paying attention to what's going on? Either way, you're crossing the pedestrian traffic as it comes in, whether you're coming into this current pond area or you're coming out of it. So I just didn't know if I don't know, grasping at straws a little bit on this one. It's whether coming in or coming out. Is there really a difference
When
in
you go
safety?
into that, you will probably be going on, if you're facing First Avenue, you would probably be on the right-hand side. You would not be crossing a lane, I don't think, to go into it. And then when you exit it, you would be going away from the store. I just, there are comments here that say that where vehicles exit, they must cross the access drive. No, where is it? There may be some potential conflicts between vehicles entering the drive-through lanes and the trucks utilizing the loading area. And for vehicles exiting the drive-through lanes, there is adequate room to maneuver. Pavement markings and signage are sufficient to ensure safe traffic flow. I'm concerned about pedestrians. And if you look at the map this is the only one where they included a map of how the vehicles exiting that could leave the lot,
Exiting what, the
the drive-through lane.
the kiosk?
Yeah, to leave the kiosk, then you have a choice of really making a huge U-turn.
You have to go out onto First Avenue.
No, but what I'm saying is there someplace else where this could be done, where they wouldn't have to do this U-turn to get out on First Avenue?
They don't, do they?
say that again? They don't what?
They don't do a U-turn to get onto First Avenue. They just go out, and if they go right or go left.
So their movement plan shows that they could do either. Staff anticipates that you would not have U-turns because,
You're saying U-turn coming back down in
so if you look at this-
parallel to the.
if you look at the screen right now, this is in the packet in their site plan stuff, the submittal materials.
Yeah.
You can see that they do show a right-hand U-turn, but staff would anticipate that most people would go straight ahead based on the orientation of the item, though it is theoretically possible to U-turn.
And come back down where those diagonal lines are?
So they show one where you would go straight ahead and come back to that southmost First Avenue exit, or curve around and go out on that middle one.
Oh, okay.
And so that's what Nancy's concern is regarding.
Any other discussion? If not, would somebody like to make the findings of fact?
regarding item EXC 21-0014, I concur with the findings set forth in the staff report of September 8th, 2021, and conclude that the general and specific standards are satisfied unless amended or opposed by another board member. I recommend the board adopt the findings in the staff report for the approval of this special exception.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Roll call, please.
Carlson,
No.
Crucilis,
Yes.
Parker, Pretorius,
Yes.
Russo.
Yes.
This motion is declared approved. A person desiring to appeal this decision to a court of record may do so within 30 days after the decision is filed with the city clerk's office. All right. Next up, the consideration of meeting minutes from August 11th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Second?
Second.
And item number 6, I'm sorry, motion carries. You need roll call?
Just a voice vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Announcements?
I have no announcements other than I will coordinate with Bryce to try and figure out what happened with that, just for future, because otherwise we'll probably,
We have an alternate?
we would most likely need to, I guess it depends on if Bryce would step down, but we would probably want to seek alternatives.
Is he permanently stationed over there?
For at least
No.
a year.
It's kind of sporadic. I think his current mission is through December, but he said it could change. So I will circle back with him and see if there's a way to figure this out. And if not, we'll approach it at that point in time.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I
So
move to
moved.
adjourn.
Let's go.
All right, thank you.